From SpongeBob appearing in the Super Bowl, to an Iranian bootleg of SpongeBob, this show has some pretty insane moments. So I've researched for hours and found tons of obscure details and scenes, which I've divided into the typical 5-layer iceberg. And I'll start with the sane and slowly go towards the deepest depths, which even the biggest SpongeBob fans might not know about. Starting with the surface, Pearl's mother. Pearl was the second character that Steven Hillenburg had created for the show, and for a character that was given so much importance, there has always been one mystery that has followed around her: the identity of her mother. To address this, there was an unreleased special episode that was in the works during season 5, but Steven shot it down because one of his rules for Nickelodeon is that her mother is never revealed. Still, this has not stopped theorists from coming up with stories to fill the void. One of these stories comes from Mr. Krabs' background. We see in the training video that Mr. Krabs had served in a war and was depressed afterwards.
After the war, Krabs stayed secluded in a deep depression.
The theory goes that he likely met her after this incident, and this is how he found the light in his life again. But like Pearl, she came with high and expensive standards, and Krabs' cheapness drove her away, leaving him with their baby daughter. This could explain why Krabs often spoils Pearl, going against his own usual cheapness as a way to cope with his lost wife. The other story takes a darker turn. This one comes from Krabs' home, with some rather questionable things.
Mr. Krabs sure has a lot of expensive treasures to drip paint on.
Among these things, a picture of a whale with a harpoon almost catches everyone off guard. Of course, SpongeBob doesn't notice it, but it raises the question: if Krabs has a whale for a daughter, why would he have such a traumatic picture of Pearl? This theory says that Krabs killed Pearl's mother and then found Pearl, and then, perhaps fulfilled by loneliness, he took in little helpless Pearl, eventually forming a relationship with her. This could also be why Krabs often says mother of Pearl whenever something bad happens. But there's something deeper that could explain why Mr. Krabs would do something like that, which brings us to the next entry on the iceberg: Krabby Patty's secret formula. If there's a bigger mystery than Pearl's mother in SpongeBob, it has to be the Krabby Patty secret formula. And the show has given us a lot of Easter eggs through all this time, but never something real. The internet went wild with theories once the episode Krabby Road aired, because it gave us this reveal.
Well done!
I'm ready?
This led to a lot of people thinking that the formula isn't real and is just a ruse created by Krabs as a business strategy. But the episode The Great Patty Caper also gave us these ingredients.
Flour, barnacle shavings, sea salt.
And there's another ingredient confirmed in Friend or Foe.
Our little squabble only got me part of the recipe.
But the theory that has every conspiracy theorist in a chokehold is the one where Krabs had killed Pearl's mother and used her as meat for the patties. This would explain the unique taste all Bikini Bottomites talk about, and why Krabs would keep Pearl around. Sperm whales are huge, and one could give Mr. Krabs enough to keep the restaurant open for many years. And when he ran out, he would have Pearl. None of this is confirmed, of course, but the more you dig in, the darker things get. Sandy and her inconsistencies. Sandy is one of those fan favorite characters whose actions aren't really questioned, but her very existence is one of those things that sticks out, being different from everything around her. She's the only land animal and wants to go to Texas so much that even her surroundings can't bear it.
Wish I was back in Texas.
If she misses Texas so much, then why stay in Bikini Bottom? Not only this, but she's the only animal that can take off her fur coat like it's the clothes she wears. She wears something inside this fursuit, as seen as something is in the kitchen with Sandy. Now, it's no secret that she's a scientist, but it goes under the radar that she can time travel. But that's not all. She can also dimension jump. That's when Doodlebob made a comeback. The company she works for sent her deep into the ocean. They say that it's to study sea creatures, but it honestly seems like a waste. Some say that she's a spy, and others say that she's a time traveler trying to prevent something in the future. But whatever it may be, Sandy just doesn't fit in Bikini Bottom, Sailor Mouth. Even with its censored version, Sailor Mouth is an episode that raised eyebrows of many parents around the world. It makes one of the top entries in any controversial SpongeBob episodes list. And if it wasn't frowned upon enough, Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob, revealed in an interview that the cast actually said the swear words during its recording. Initially, the cast was told to come up with alternatives, but found it too hard to make kid-friendly. So they did what they had to do, and then the editors did the work of censoring it. The uncensored recording was leaked in February of 2024 as a part of a larger Giga leak that dug into the buried files of Nickelodeon. The audio was temporarily available on the Internet Archive before being taken down by Paramount. A second leak was shared on YouTube shortly after, and with the help of users Derps and Optigear on Twitter, the video still exists on the site, but Nickelodeon hasn't commented or made anything official. Burger King's SpongeBob ad. If you thought that Sailor Mouth was bad, it's nothing compared to what Burger King cursed everyone with. Back in the mid-2000s, Burger King decided to come up with a marketing strategy that focused on the yellow sponge and his SquarePants. But instead of making it goofy and capturing the essence of the show, they made Square Butts the centerpiece, with women having a square box on their bottoms. It also featured a king that sang the lyrics of a song. To put it lightly, the song portrayed SpongeBob in a light that was not suitable at all for kids. They went the distance and made an extended version. The ad is still up on YouTube for those who dare, but don't say I didn't warn you. Spongehenge. When it comes to scary SpongeBob episodes, Spongehenge is a title that seems like it shouldn't be there. That is, until you actually watch the episode. It starts off innocently, with the jellyfish getting attached to SpongeBob because of its tunes. This attachment would soon turn into a full-blown obsession, with the jellyfish not allowing SpongeBob to go to work, get him thrown out of his best friend's house, and finally, forcing him to live in a cave just to escape. SpongeBob grows old in the cave, eventually carving a stone version of himself to keep him company. When he realized that version also makes the same tune, he made life-size versions of them. This finally ends the curse, as a nod to the Stonehenges in real life, and SpongeBob rushes home to Bikini Bottom. The episode doesn't stop here though, because when he gets back, SpongeBob realizes that the entirety of Bikini Bottom is gone, and that everyone he loved has died. 3,000 years later, aliens have seemingly taken over Bikini Bottom, constructing theories about how the Spongehenges got there. This episode is especially dark, because according to it, it basically says that the last time people saw SpongeBob was actually the last, and it started the end for Bikini Bottom. It's a full wipeout of everything the show stood for. The last words of Patrick was him accusing SpongeBob of being a bad influence. Krabs' last was reeling SpongeBob into work, and we didn't even see much of Squidward. A possible explanation for this is that it was on purpose, because the episode number for this one is 99B. It's likely that SpongeBob was supposed to end here, but it got rebooted for seasons later. In any case, it makes the top of the list for scary episodes for longtime fans. Squidward's name. We see so much of Squidward in the show that it's generally accepted that his name should fit who he is, but that's actually misleading. The name Squidward comes from a combination of squid and the popular name Edward, but Squidward is not a squid at all. He's an octopus. The name mismatch is referenced because he's drawn with 6 tentacles instead of the usual 8 for an octopus. This is because of animation constraints, as drawing 8 on a character who walks upright would be complex. Steven Hillenburg later commented that he wanted to name the character after a squid as a prank. Squidward's father. Speaking of Squidward, not much is known about his background or family. His mother is just called Mrs. Tentacles, his granny is Granny Tentacles, and his teenage cousin doesn't even get a name. The only explanation is his father, whose name is Jeffrey Jeff Tentacles. His first appearance was in the book Hooray for Dads, and wears a brown shirt. The only difference between him and Squidward is that his shirt is a lighter shade of brown. His skin is greener than Squidward's, and he wears a red necktie and glasses. But this is quickly debunked in a later episode from season 15, called Jeffy T's Prankemporium. He is shown to be a fun-loving prankster, quickly bonding with SpongeBob and Patrick over his famous prank items. It's here that he also mentions that he's named Squidward as a joke. It's crazy how they simply flip the script. SpongeBob's age. For a sponge who has lived through 16 seasons of a show, there are a ton of theories and conspiracies on what age he actually is. Most people reference his license that is seen in multiple episodes, which gives his birth date as July 14th, 1986, which means that SpongeBob is 39 years old as of July 2025. But the show tries to keep his age vague, because it wants to remain relevant to younger audiences. And let's face it, he acts younger in some episodes and older in others, so I guess there's no telling. The 7 Deadly Sins. There's a theory that floats on the internet, linking the 7 Deadly Sins to the main cast of SpongeBob. According to this, SpongeBob is lust, Patrick is sloth, Krabs is greed, Plankton is envy, Squidward is wrath, Sandy is pride, and Gary is gluttony. Some conservative parents warn their kids not to watch a show based on this theory, believing that it encourages such behavior in children. Can't really blame them when Mr. Krabs literally sings this song.
Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching.
But this view has clearly not impacted SpongeBob's popularity. SpongeBob's orientation. SpongeBob's sexual orientation has been debated for a long time, but perhaps the episode that caught everyone's eye is one called Rockabye Believe. In the episode, SpongeBob and Patrick try to care for a baby clam.
It's a baby scallop.
SpongeBob becomes the mother, with Patrick becoming the father. Soon after, Patrick starts going out to make money for the family, and usual resentments of marriage build up.
What?
Oh, nothing.
For a second, I thought you were mad at me.
Do you remember what you said to me this morning?
It ends with the clam seemingly jumping off the window, only to have learnt to fly. This episode caused a lot of parents to be concerned. This led to speculations that SpongeBob is indeed gay. But Steven Hillenburg stated that SpongeBob is asexual, not gay. His specific intention was to portray the character as asexual, without a need for romantic relationships. Despite this, many theories still go around this statement, treating it like it never happened. Barack Obama's favorite character. Barack Obama served 2 terms as US president, starting in 2009 and ending in 2017. During that time, he was married to his wife Michelle Obama and had 2 daughters, Malaya and Sasha Obama. Now, according to an interview he did in 2007, 2 years before he would become president, SpongeBob is one of his favorite TV characters of all time, and it's the show he watches with his daughters. He mentioned the yellow sponge alongside some of his other favorites, like The Entourage, SportsCenter, and The Wire. Routers later mentioned this in an article about SpongeBob getting its 10th anniversary, and honestly, it's insane that a president of the United States would list SpongeBob as one of his favorite characters. Shanghaired's endings. Shanghaired is one of those episodes that bent even SpongeBob's logic. Right from the get-go, it was after SpongeBob's life. The episode starts with SpongeBob's house being smashed in.
Holy shrimp!
Squidward gets involved, laughing at SpongeBob's stupidity. But when the acre comes after his house too, things get serious. The pair, along with Patrick, think that it's a good idea to climb into the big ghost shit floating above their house. That's when they meet the Flying Dutchman.
Holy disturbing! The Flying Dutchman in his own lair!
Squidward straight up gets tortured, and the other 2 get imprisoned as slaves. But it didn't go as planned.
Whoa! Get back on the ship.
In the end, the ghosts want to eat them, and the pair steal his lucky socks. That's when the Flying Dutchman gives them 3 wishes. The version everyone knows is where SpongeBob gets the last wish, and he wishes for the ghost to be vegetarian. But this isn't how it always ended. In the first run, the decision was given by Patchy to the audience, with a number displayed to call for a vote. The vote was between 3 versions. One where Patrick wishes for gum that never lost its flavor, thus letting them be eaten. Another was where Squidward wishes that he had never met SpongeBob and Patrick. They get eaten and are still introducing themselves in the Dutchman's belly. And then, of course, comes the SpongeBob version. They later scrapped the idea, choosing SpongeBob to run as the actual thing. SpongeBob in the Super Bowl. SpongeBob once made an appearance in the Super Bowl halftime show. He's the show's leader, singing Sweet Victory, Patrick on the drums, Sandy on the guitar, Krabs on the keytar, and Squidward was the conductor. Even Mrs. Puff makes an appearance on the guitar. Squilliam was for once sweating and then faints, believing that Squidward finally overtook him, which makes Squidward really happy. But this wasn't the only time, as in 2024, SpongeBob makes an appearance on Super Bowl 53. He sings Sweet Victory again, but this time as his 3D self, alongside his pals. This scene also featured football players surrounded by bubbles and jellyfish as the crowd went wild. SpongeBob in real life. On the 20th of July 2013, J Chase Films released an episode called SpongeBob in Real Life. The video was less than 3 minutes long and features SpongeBob with Patrick as they were transported to real life. They meet the creator and play checkers, video games, cards, and many other real-life things. In this video, the boy also films and posts them on YouTube, earning millions of views. In fact, this would actually become true, because that video blew up, getting 101 million views. This would become the foundation of the channel, which built on the popularity and even has a full-length film on the channel. It is over 800,000 subscribers and is still active to this day 12 years later. Patrick and Gary. Patrick and Gary can't seem more different than each other. Patrick is stupid and often has no regard for himself or others, while Gary, on the other hand, is often the voice of reason, pressuring even SpongeBob to make better choices. But according to a family tree that was displayed on a rock, Patrick and Gary are first cousins. How a snail and a starfish could be related is beyond me. It gets more crazy when you realize that Gary is a pet and SpongeBob owns him, which means that SpongeBob owns Patrick's first cousin. But between the two of them, the fact is largely forgotten, as they don't seem to have a relationship independently, only knowing each other largely through SpongeBob. Gary does leave SpongeBob for Patrick in the episode Dumped, but it was only because Patrick had cookies in his pocket, debunking the theory. Their relationship could also turn straight up dangerous, as Patrick once forced Gary to take a bath using a hose and a flamethrower, and then used salt on him. In this episode, which is called Pet Sitter Pat, he also does not bother to feed him. I guess family is family, and neither of them can change that fact. House Fancy. When it comes to gross out SpongeBob episodes, fans generally bring up the Splinter episode, but one that slides under everyone's radar is called House Fancy. The episode starts with Squidward getting jealous of Squilliam yet again.
Viewers out there, when I'm saying this, you are truly a fancy man.
Well,
Determined to get an edge over him, Squidward calls up the show and proclaims that he has a better house, and the host gives him 2 hours to prepare. Of course, he doesn't actually have anything to back it up, so he takes SpongeBob's help. But the crazy part is that SpongeBob admits that Patrick is borrowing his brain for the weekend, in exchange for a couple of chocolate bars.
He traded me these 2 chocolate bars for it.
I don't care.
This ends up having disastrous consequences, as every time Squidward gives SpongeBob a task, he does it recklessly. In one of these tasks, Squidward gets hurt, and rather badly, if I say so myself. This is the first episode of season 6, and the Splinter was the 5th one of the same season, which makes this episode the parent of the Splinter one. Apparently, season 6 flopped exactly because of episodes like this. Layer 3, In the Depths, Red Mist Squidward. Red Mist Squidward is a creepypasta that has been around for a while. The story goes that an intern at Nickelodeon was tasked with watching the episode Fear of a Krabby Patty before it aired, but when the title card appeared, it said Red Mist. Thinking it was someone messing with him because he was an intern, he continued watching. It began with Squidward practicing his clarinet, but stopped because he heard SpongeBob laughing outside. He then yells at SpongeBob, as he usually does, telling SpongeBob that he needs to practice. The scene changes, with Squidward in a concert hall in front of an audience, but it's quite obvious that he is really nervous about his performance, and it goes horribly wrong. So wrong, in fact, that the audience is absolutely disgusted with him, with even SpongeBob joining in. This hit Squidward hard, because SpongeBob has always liked him. Another thing to know about the audience is they all have hyper-realistic bloodshot eyes. Here's where it gets creepy. Squidward gets home and starts breaking down, but as time progresses, there's a soft wind in the background. This gets louder and louder until eventually, even children laughing in the background can be heard. A gory image of a child flashes through the screen as Squidward ugly cries. The tears turn into blood as the laughing sound gets demonic. Suddenly, everything goes silent as Squidward reveals his now bloodshot eyes. The scene gets creepier as he looks directly into the camera and then resumes crying. The background noises resume, and finally, a deep voice echoes with the words, "Do it." With that, Squidward reveals that he's been holding a gun this whole time, points it at his head, and I believe I can leave the rest up to your imagination. The cherry on top is the fact that the origin of this episode was never found, but this was referenced in what's now a deleted scene in the episode SpongeBob in Random Land. It's easy to see why it's deleted now, especially given the dark nature of the story behind the picture. Jack Kahuna Laguna. Remember the Jack Kahuna Laguna character from the episode SpongeBob vs. the Big One? Well, he didn't get his name by accident. His voice actor was none other than Johnny Depp, and the character is a reference to Jack Sparrow from the Pirates of the Caribbean. Kahuna means the wise man in Hawaiian, with Laguna meaning lagoon. Put together, the name means Jack Wise Man Lagoon. The design is also quite rare, because primarily he is a fish, but has humanoid features. He teaches SpongeBob and Patrick how to surf, and lives as a surfing legend on a deserted island. He later sacrifices himself to a wave to save Cashy, the Krusty Krab's cash register, and by extension, saves Krabs from going insane. The character also appears in the game SpongeBob vs. the Big One Beach Party Cook-Off, and is referenced in SpongeBob's Truth or Square. Astrology with Squidward. Astrology with Squidward is a series of SpongeBob SquarePants shorts that originally aired from 2000 to 2001. They feature Squidward giving horoscopes for 6 of the 12 zodiac signs. First comes Sagittarius, which Squidward says is the sign of the half guy, half horse with a bow and arrow. He continues by saying that Sagittariuses have great aim, but they poop while walking. He also gives this warning:
Never march behind them in a parade.
His precaution for the sign is that they do not eat enough green vegetables. Next comes Taurus, sign of the bull. According to him, this sign is the most clumsy and oafish of them all.
Taurus is the most clumsy and oafish of all zodiac signs.
He goes the opposite direction with his prediction for this sign, saying that they will eat a variety of different foods. Next comes Leo, sign of the lion. According to him, Leos have a voice of dental drill.
If you have a Leo in your family, I suggest you move out or buy earmuffs.
He also gives a rather bland prediction for this sign.
My prediction for Leo in the 12 months ahead: everyone you know will get 1 year older.
Next came Pisces, sign of the fish. He warns not to trust a Pisces because they tend to lie a lot. Of course, he also has a solution for this.
For the Pisces who wants to stop lying, I have simple advice. Never talk again.
His prediction is quite comedic, as he says Pisces noses will work just fine that year. He then moves on to Geminis, sign of the twins. He gives quite a nice explanation.
If you're a Gemini, you probably experience deja vu, the feeling that this moment has happened before. You also experience deja vu, the feeling that this moment has happened before.
And this was also his prediction for the next sign. Next came Cancer, sign of the crab. He gave Cancers the same treatment as Pisces.
They are all good at causing problems and then blaming them on others.
The prediction for this sign has to be the most random. He says that this week, Cancers will fall asleep 7 times. The series stops here because, as the narrator put it, the horoscopes were too harsh. But Nickelodeon rebooted the series in India, calling the segment Undersea Horoscopes, where all 12 signs were covered, unlike in Astrology with Squidward. Just one bite deleted scene. For all the pride that Squidward holds, there's one time where the very thing he claimed to hate put him in a chokehold. In the episode Just One Bite, he announces that he hated Krabby Patties, much to SpongeBob's shock. SpongeBob then makes it his life mission to get him to try one, and when he does, he says that he still hates the beloved burgers. But all of the confidence breaks down the second SpongeBob leaves, revealing that Squidward was now addicted, but he couldn't let SpongeBob know that. Cue him trying to get a burger without SpongeBob knowing about it. When all else fails, Squidward attempts to break into the Krusty Krab during the night.
There it is.
He eventually ends up getting it to his heart's desire, but the only catch is the episode didn't always end that way. There are a couple scenes that are now deleted that show Squidward going through far more trouble than just a safe to get his drug.
This isn't water.
Poor Squidward. But these were deleted because, according to Nickelodeon, the show didn't want children attempting to blow up anything. There were speculations that scenes were deleted because the episode aired around the 9/11 tragedy, leaving the joke in bad taste. Jimmy Neutron with SpongeBob. There is a whole series that crosses over 2 shows called SpongeBob and Jimmy Neutron, the series. They were created by a user who goes by Ramdare. The series has 2 seasons, the first having 10 episodes, including the pilot, and the second being scheduled to have 18 episodes. The first season ran from December 23rd, 2012 to June 4th, 2013, with another episode scheduled, but it was canceled. And the season's end was announced on July 1st, 2013. Season 2 was released from July 1st, 2013 to, well, the present. The show never officially came to a close, but given that the last episode was released in November of 2013, it's safe to assume that it had ended. Apart from this, the 2 shows appeared in collaborations in games such as Nicktoons Unite, and on top of this, fans have caught the Pineapple House in the background of the episode Jet Fusion. SpongeBob was also referenced by Timmy Turner in the Jimmy Power Hour comic Dimension Intervention. David Bowie and SpongeBob. David Bowie is an English singer, songwriter, and actor. He is known for songs such as Let's Dance, Space Oddity, and his duet with Queen, Under Pressure. In his acting career, he's well known for his starring role as King Jareth in the film Labyrinth. But a little known fact about him is that he provided the voice of Lord Royal Highness in the episode Atlantis SquarePants. But in the episode, he didn't sing a single note. This left everyone who did not get the reference thinking it was a bad episode. But the collaborations weren't over. His song No Control from his 1995 album Outside, which he co-wrote with Brian Eno, was used with his permission before his death for the SpongeBob musical. Nickelodeon later used another Bowie song, Starman, to promote the Patrick Star Show. Phineas and Ferb reference in SpongeBob. In the episode Summer Belongs to You, from Phineas and Ferb, there was a little Easter egg that caught everyone's eye. It's the Summer of Solace, so Phineas, Ferb, and their friends decide to travel around the world in one day in an effort to create the biggest, longest, and funnest summer of all time. But not everyone believes that they can actually achieve what they set out to do, leading them to get some encouraging words from Clay Aiken and Chaka Khan. But when the pair find themselves deserted on an island with Isabella, Phineas starts to dig a hole to find a way out, but he only finds a sponge and a starfish as he exclaims this iconic line.
Look, a sponge and a starfish. There's gotta be something we can make out of this.
Some believe that it was a shot at the show, but many others just think that it was a clever nod to the yellow sponge. But this wasn't the only time SpongeBob was referenced in the show. In another episode, No More Bunny Business, Phineas jumps out at the mail woman in the same way SpongeBob did in his show. Snowball effect. This episode is based off a technical loophole with an iceberg over Bikini Bottom. If that's not enough, snow coming from the ice turns the bottom of the sea into a playground for SpongeBob and Patrick. Squidward resists their fun, as usual, until he gets drawn to it. But Squidward escalates things and sucks the fun out of it. He eventually makes Fort Squidward to shield himself from the war that he was supposedly in. But this fort is not so innocent during production. There was supposedly supposed to be a torture room inside the fort, complete with a guillotine, but the team obviously felt that that was a little too graphic for young viewers of the show, and so it was scrapped in the final run. Nasty Patty. This is probably the worst prank played in animation history. The episode begins with the health inspector suddenly visiting the Krusty Krab, and everything goes well until SpongeBob and Krabs learn this.
Be on the lookout for a man who's been passing himself off as a health inspector in order to obtain free food. That's all for now.
Believing the inspector in the restaurant to be a criminal, Krabs decides to play a cruel joke. Against SpongeBob's suggestions, the pair come up with a nasty patty. The patty is made with volcano sauce, seahorse radish, toenail clippings, and for good measure, SpongeBob drops it in the toilet, and Mr. Krabs dries it with his filthy gym socks. Luckily for the inspector, before he could eat it, he chokes on a fly, slipping on the patty and going unconscious. After this, they realize that the inspector was real after all. Even though everything worked out in the end, this episode raises some serious questions about Krabs' ethical practices. This is the same guy who pays SpongeBob only a dime per month for all of his work, tries to get his staff to work around the clock with no breaks, and to top it off, will try to scam anyone for a quick buck. It's hard to imagine how anyone would support Krabs at all, once you realize everything he's done. This episode also makes SpongeBob an accomplice to a crime he can't even have nightmares about. Layer 4, Rock Bottom, Bob the Sponge. Before SpongeBob became the icon we know today, there was Bob the Sponge. He was the narrator of a little-known educational comic called The Intertidal Zone. This version was created in the 1980s by Steven Hillenburg. While the man was teaching marine biology to children, Steven's love for marine life started in his own childhood, alongside his artistic abilities. True to these devotions, he would go on to major in marine biology and minor in art. After graduation, he joined the Ocean Institute, where teaching would combine his two biggest passions. The product of this combination would become Bob the Sponge. Bob the Sponge in the Intertidal Zone was designed to resemble a real sea sponge, round, porous, and simple in appearance. He wore sunglasses and took on the role of a scientific narrator, guiding readers through the biology of the tide pool creatures with expert knowledge. His partner, Rocky, added comedic relief, getting himself into sticky situations during interviews. This comic book was the beginning of Steven's journey as he began to consider art more seriously. SpongeBob's End. There was a false rumor on Twitter from a parody account that said the following: "Unfortunately, our show will be coming to a final end as of March 1st, 2018. It's been a long ride, and we're very happy for all the fans worldwide that have shown support throughout the years. None of this would have been possible without you." The post ended with a yellow heart, and it was quickly debunked as production had halted for a bit in preparation for the SpongeBob Out of Water movie, but they were still very much in business. But what the Post did not realize is that Steven Hillenburg died later that same year, in November of 2018. Many fans believed that the show should have ended then, with the declining quality of later seasons. But SpongeBob went on, and it seems to have found its redemption arc. Season 9 onwards have been cited to be better, and the fan base is ever growing. Squidward got a DUI. If you thought Squidward gets into a lot of trouble, his voice actor, Roger Bumpass, isn't any better. On January 15th, 2016, Bumpass was arrested for an alleged DUI in Burbank, California. A police report of the incident alleged that officers of the Burbank Police Department found Bumpass in his car in the middle of the road. He was said to have been leaning against the vehicle, and when officers approached him for questioning, he attempted to walk away and lost his balance, nearly falling to the ground. Bumpass admitted to drinking and driving after leaving Burbank Bar before the police spotted him, and he was soon handcuffed after failing a sobriety test. His blood alcohol levels were said to be more than twice of the legal limit. He was later released on a $15,000 bail shortly the next morning. The incident was first reported by celebrity gossip website TMZ several days after it occurred. On January 19th, a day later, Bumpass alleged to the website that the police lied about the DUI report, claiming that he was not leaning against the car when officers spotted him, and that he was being tailed and pulled over by the officers before his arrest, though he did confess again to the DUI charge. Nickelodeon representatives were notified of the incident by Bumpass, but did not release any immediate comments or actions regarding the matter. 10 days after the incident, Nickelodeon representatives confirmed to TMZ that Bumpass would remain on SpongeBob SquarePants for the foreseeable future. Yummer in the SpongeBob Saves the Day. Yum, known by fans as Yummer, revolving around the SpongeBob Saves the Day game. When a group of enthusiasts were going to the game's files, they noticed that they were able to find the sprite sheets. When they got to the Krusty Krab sheet, this character appeared among the other stored objects of the environment. 2 separate frames for this character were discovered. The one with the face in view, the version is called Yummer 2. The other one is just the hands and is called Yummer 1, which appears in a separate part of the location. After many emails were sent to the development team, they finally came with some official statements about the origins of this character. Yum is a modeling test that was created around the year 2010. He had become a meme around the office. They used this character as a placeholder, and it was recognizable when going back and editing work. In addition to this, they explored what this character would look like peeking around poles as Mrs. Puff and Mr. Krabs. They forgot to remove him, which is absolutely beyond me, and thus this character's model still remains in the game's atlas. Ice Spice's first crush. Ice Spice is an American rapper and songwriter. She is known for songs such as Deli, Munch, In Her Mood, among others. She is admitted to having a huge crush on SpongeBob SquarePants. In a clip that surfaced on March 15th, Ice Spice, complete with her trademark red hair, opened up about having a crush on the Bikini Bottom native. The Bronx rap star explained that SpongeBob is the only animated character she ever felt strongly about. And she goes on to explain that the show was very integrated in her life. This isn't the first time Ice Spice has displayed her admiration for the sponge. On her debut EP Like, Spice put her fandom on full display, with a track in reference to the show titled Bikini Bottom. The track features a sample from the show's iconic theme. What's more, the recent news says that she's set to appear in a new SpongeBob movie that's in the works, along with an original song to go with it, Stolen Rooftop SpongeBob Balloons. Just when you think that SpongeBob's run with Burger King, the fast food chain had other tricks up its sleeve. The SpongeBob SquarePants Burger King inflatable was a giant inflatable created in 2004 by the company Inflatable Images for Burger King. They were made as promotion for the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, and what were these inflatables known for? Being stolen so often that they had to be scrapped. On November 11th, 2004, when the SpongeBob SquarePants movie promotion started at Burger King, around 4,700 locations in the United States put up this gigantic 9-foot inflatable of SpongeBob. At first, everything seemed to be going fine, until about a month into the promotion, when several Burger King locations reported that their SpongeBob inflatable was missing. This started a phenomenon known as sponge nappings. It resulted in people who had supposedly stolen these inflatables to sell them on eBay for a large amount of money or to leave ransom notes. Several news outlets and Burger King locations around the United States said that if anyone had found their inflatable SpongeBob somewhere or potentially know who stole the balloon, they would give that person burger bucks, which was good for a year's supply of the original Whopper sandwiches. The place they eventually found these balloons were nothing less than random. These locations included apartment complexes, the middle of the woods, and even house fires. All of the formerly stolen SpongeBob inflatables were either given back to a Burger King location or were damaged beyond repair and were trashed. Knowing all of this, there are still people to this day who own these inflatables illegally from Burger King distributors or illegally from rooftops of restaurants. Krabby Patty creature feature. If there's a SpongeBob episode that came close to being a Walking Dead incarnate, it has to be the episode Krabby Patty creature feature. This episode begins with Mr. Krabs delivering Krabby Patties to two customers at the Krusty Krab, but he doesn't get his usual praise. Instead, they get bored of the burgers and want something new. This brings out something ancient in Krabs, who takes SpongeBob to an underground lab, and he reveals that he hired Sandy to make a new type of Krabby Patties, called the Secret Patty. Despite SpongeBob disliking this method, they serve the patties to the customers.
Step right up and get your new improved patties.
Later that night, after everyone eats the patties, Mr. Krabs eats one himself. He starts to feel weird. SpongeBob watches in horror as Mr. Krabs then transforms into a Krabby Patty monster. Soon, Sandy transforms as well, followed by everyone else in the restaurant. The creatures soon leave the building and start going around Bikini Bottom, feeding people their body parts so that they become Krabby Patty creatures as well. While all of this is going on, SpongeBob learns that Plankton is the only other person who has not been infected yet. SpongeBob hides in the chum bucket and locks the doors. He tells Plankton about the situation, but he only believes it when he sees it happening to himself. Eventually, these two become monsters, and just when all hope seems to be lost, some chum falls into the Krabby Patty Patrick's mouth, causing him to become sick and throw up the secret patty, becoming normal again. This finally gives SpongeBob an idea. He goes around feeding everyone chum, eventually turning everything normal again. But this episode isn't done haunting us yet, as just before the screen turns to black, this happens.
Have some.
The elements of this episode clearly scared many of the young viewers, and their parents were not pleased. Given that this was from season 11, after the show's redemption, it's clear that the team stopped experimenting with how far they can stretch the show's mortality. SpongeBob and Tehran. SpongeBob and Tehran is a 2017 unfinished Iranian computer animated made-for-television comedy bootleg that is based on the illegal SpongeBob SquarePants Persian dub, Babasfana. The whole thing is only 44 minutes long, which is more like an extended TV special than a film of its own. But of course, this didn't stop it from being actually aired, despite the thousands of copyright laws that it violated. Not much is actually known about the plot. The closest thing I could find was the quote, "This animated story about the friendship of SpongeBob and Patrick in Tehran. When Bob and their friend Patrick travel to Iran for the first time, the hamburgers catch their attention until they notice something is happening." This is the film that apparently spawned 3 sequels. In the movie, SpongeBob talks more like Squidward and is called Bobby Sponge. It starts off with an emergency at the Krusty Krab, which ends up being that they were out of the secret sauce used to make Krabby Patties. So after locking down the restaurant and sucking all the customers in a vacuum, they set off to Iran to hunt down the guy who holds all the answers. I'll spare you the trouble of of this torture because the plot doesn't hold up later in the movie, because they get completely sidetracked. Instead of going on a random sequence of events that make no sense, there's a whole scene where SpongeBob and his friends navigate through traffic, which lasts for a solid 6 minutes, and it's all downhill from here. There's another whole scene of the cast enjoying Iranian food. This, coupled with the fact that it's unfinished, means that it ends in an abrupt cliffhanger. But I think everyone is thankful because the animations look worse than PS1 games. Layer 5, The Abyss. Back before its launch in 1999, according to the team, SpongeBob was originally named SpongeBoy, but someone was already using the name, so the Y became a B. A quick Google search may lead you to believe Nickelodeon changed the name after discovering SpongeBoy was trademarked by a mop company. That is, until you watch a video titled The SpongeBoy Mop. Does not exist on a channel called Kid Leaves Stoop. The creator goes into this trademark not being an official globe one, as SpongeBoy is still a thing in countries like Iceland. He also points out that the US-only patent came with the name after the release of the show, meaning that the name change did not make sense. Moreover, in 2002, with the first DVD being released, there was a bonus behind the scenes thing in the end. In it, one of the crew members says that SpongeBob Ahoy was a character, not a product. The creator of the video was actually able to uncover the real SpongeBoy, revealing that it was a pencil. In 1992, Pentec, a New Jersey pencil company, released Cool Art, basically trying to create something trendy. The 11th Cool Art pencil is one called SpongeBoy. I highly recommend watching the video, as the creator also goes into other references of SpongeBoy. A Day with SpongeBob SquarePants, unauthorized mockumentary. This was supposed to be a lost movie of the beloved Sponge, being released in 2011, but the thing is, no one can find the DVD of the movie. The evidence points to this being an unreleased promo DVD that had few copies slip out somewhere along the line. The only thing left is a likely fake backstory by a supposed Regal employee. I worked for Regal Films up until 2012. It was founded by one of my childhood heroes who wanted nothing more than a quick buck. It's not a legit production company. It ran out of that friend's house, and the only employees were me and another friend. Pretty much equal to a bootleg ring, though not totally illegal. Though it is true we made many DVDs that were simply slideshows. We also got our hands on a few semi-major productions that the studios wanted nothing to do with. A Day with SpongeBob was made by Viacom, without involvement from any of the regular SpongeBob crew after the success of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. As such, the cover art isn't even remotely reminiscent of the film. We were told to locate any semi-relevant clip art that looked SpongeBob-ish, but not to use any assets from the film. The unauthorized mockumentary thing was there to throw people off. The plot was pretty simple, but still only vaguely related to the online summary. He goes on to explain the plot of the movie. Basically, Patchy, played by definitely not Tom Kenny, wins a contest to spend a day with the Bikini Bottom gang, and he actually gets to. He messes up everything initially, but soon fixes it all. The whole thing was pretty much a reference to multiple episodes, but no one has the means to confirm any of this, because the Regal Films website, that would, in theory, lead to information, tries to install a Trojan virus whenever you go on it. I guess this is one of those mysteries that will never get solved. Super Sponge lewd concept art. SpongeBob SquarePants Super Sponge is a 2001 platformer game based off the show. Developed by Climax Development and published by the THQ, it was released for the PlayStation on September 20th, 2001, and the Game Boy Advance on November 8th, 2001. While the game itself was enjoyed by many, some fans found interesting images in the files. They included SpongeBob and Patrick doing the deed, along with two others. Even the Cutting Room Floor website, which used to have the picture, seems seems to have been taken down. Palestinian Krusty Krab, a restaurant themed after the SpongeBob SquarePants Krusty Krab, existed in Ramallah, West Bank, Palestine, owned by a company called Salta Burgers. It opened in 2014 and was notable for its replica of the cartoon restaurant. And I mean the full scene, from the colors to the ambience of the place. Salta Burger is literally the Arabic name for Krabby Patty. It's a great idea, except for the copyright infringement. It was in operation till 2017 and would be shut down by 2019, and has been permanently closed ever since. As of 2025, it's now been replaced by a coffee shop, Bikini Bottom Atoll, and nuclear experiments. Bikini Bottom Atoll is iconic for being the main indicator for where Bikini Bottom is, but in real life, the location takes a much darker twist. Bikini Bottom Atoll was a US nuclear testing site where 23 atomic and hydrogen bombs were detonated between 1946 and 1958, resulting in widespread radioactive contamination and the forced relocation of native inhabitants. The tests include the powerful Castle Bravo test in 1954, had devastating and lasting impacts on the environment and the health of islanders, leading to cancers, birth defects, and a long-term inability to return to their homes. The tests took place at various sites, including on the reef, in the air, and underwater. The Castle Bravo test on March 1st, 1954 was the first and most powerful US hydrogen bomb, with a yield of 15 megatons. It was 1,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The inhabitants were forced to move multiple times, first to other islands, and eventually being evacuated again in the 1970s, when it was discovered that islands were still radioactive in 2005. The National Cancer Institute reported that the risk of cancer for those who had the fallout was higher than 1 in 3. The radioactive contamination of the islands are still active today. Are you happy now? Perhaps the most depressing episode of all time is an episode titled Are You Happy Now? The more you dig into it, the worse it gets. The episode begins when SpongeBob first learns that Squidward does not have a happy memory, which is dark right from the get-go.
What's your happiest memory, Squidward?
It basically breaks Squidward down. Feeling concerned, SpongeBob offers to make a happy memory with him. However, this does not go well.
Oops, that was a sour note.
And now he's melted it.
Squidward then locks himself in the house for 2 whole weeks. When SpongeBob finally gets a response from him, he's only met with aggressiveness. But perhaps the most uncomfortable moments come from the time that Squidward is alone. That's when the episode starts to make these kind of jokes.
Will help.
Even though things switched up at the last second, the show knew exactly what it was doing. This coming a banned episode, Hooky. The episode Hooky has probably one of the darkest background details in all of SpongeBob history, and it often goes unnoticed. The episode literally starts with a warning label, with Krabs being over the top.
The hooks! The hooks!
Nevertheless, Patrick takes SpongeBob to what he calls the carnival.
The carnival is back in town!
First of all, a pair of sea creatures playing with this thing that often causes their death is questionable, just like Krabs warned them. But then Patrick says this.
There was one kid here earlier.
Doesn't look like any carnival I ever... Oh!
Just as he finishes his sentence, a pair of children's shoes can be seen on the floor near the pair. That's when it all comes together. It's likely that this kid is drowned, and his footwear has come off. But the episode never addresses this, and once you see the pair of red shoes, you can't unsee it. Have you seen this snail? This is an episode that accuses a granny to be much more evil than she first presents. Have you seen this snail starts with SpongeBob forgetting to feed Gary because of being distracted. The situation gets so bad that Gary abandons SpongeBob and leaves town. When SpongeBob finds out, things go as expected.
Gary? 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 Gary!
Meanwhile, Gary goes through a town far away from Bikini Bottom and gets picked up by an old lady who mistakes him for being another snail. But her mask starts to slip pretty quick. She initially takes good care of Gary, often taking him out, but Gary can't be away from SpongeBob for too long. He eventually sees the papers from SpongeBob and realizes how much SpongeBob misses him. But things go horribly wrong when Gary tries to find a way out.
Oh dear. Oh, the meatloaf's not quite ready yet.
He quickly understands that Grandma is overfeeding him, trying to fatten him up to eat him. Even portraits help him out after that. But the grandma doesn't give up that easily, giving chase with more food in her hands. That's when her full nature comes out. It was only when Gary sacrifices another gangster snail that he's able to finally go around and search for SpongeBob. Because of how action-packed this episode is, it's easy to forget just how many snails there were in that closet. It's essentially equivalent to escaping a serial killer without legs. Who even approves of these episodes? That's genuinely crazy to think about. If you liked this iceberg, make sure to click one of my other videos on screen. And for more content like this, make sure to subscribe. Please. Who lives in a pineapple under the sea? Well, lately, it feels like nobody. That the once vibrant underwater setting of SpongeBob has been replaced with a flat, generic blue background that doesn't even look like the ocean anymore. To new viewers, the show might as well take place on land. In this video, we're breaking down the 4 biggest reasons SpongeBob has stopped feeling like it's underwater. And more importantly, later in this video, we're gonna talk about what the creators could do to fix it. Big thanks to Awe for inspiring this video. Now, the first reason that SpongeBob doesn't feel like it takes place underwater anymore has to be its change in color saturation. If you compare the newest season of SpongeBob all the way back to season 1, you can see that it has a less warm and darker shade, which helps give it the feeling of being underwater, as the brighter season 15 background is more similar to a sunny sky. However, this lower saturation was probably not done as an artistic choice, but more due to the limitations of animation technology at the time. For example, another show which started airing around the same time as the first season of SpongeBob was Family Guy. And if you look at its first season and compare it to the current seasons, the newer seasons are way more saturated, and the SpongeBob animators were probably just following the trend, not realizing how much the desaturated look benefited the underwater aesthetic. Another thing the earlier seasons did better is the scenery and setting the stage for the world of the show. You might have noticed that there are a lot more wide and expansive shots of Bikini Bottom back in the day. This is an intentional decision made by the artist to show the scale of the world, which mirrors how massive the actual ocean is. So these shots make SpongeBob feel like it's in its own unique setting. But another thing that helped the world building and complemented the scenery was the frequent use of the French narrator.
Ah, the sea. So fascinating. So wonderful. Here we see Bikini Bottom, teeming with life.
Goo Lagoon. A stinky mud puddle to you and me, but to the inhabitants of Bikini Bottom, a wonderful, stinky mud puddle.
The French narrator always made the world feel alive, as he guided us along Bikini Bottom. With a lack of narration in the show, SpongeBob nowadays feels like it's trying to be more of a typical cartoon and just get to the point faster, which definitely contributed to it losing some of the old charm it once had. But another reason why the older seasons had more of an underwater vibe is because of the characters based on different sea creatures that they introduce. In the first 2 seasons, we are introduced to a whole cast based on creatures, like crabs, starfish, whales, and pufferfish, cementing in the viewers' minds that we are underwater. But something which seasons can't do past season 2 is introduce long-lasting characters, which very much goes against the nature of the ocean, which has hundreds of different creatures inhabiting it. Although, if they were to introduce more new characters in the show, it could get overstuffed. So there's a bit of conflict of interests there. But for now, let's move away from the visual-based points and look at the music. The music of SpongeBob is perfect, capturing both the chill and laid-back vibe of the underwater aesthetic, making it feel like you're drifting across water. However, similar to the point of new characters, there isn't much new music in newer SpongeBob, just reused music from earlier seasons, which makes it seem tired and sucks those initial feelings we had. However, unlike the previous point on how adding new characters may make the show feel overstuffed, I believe adding new music would unanimously benefit the show and the underwater aesthetic. Now that we've covered the 4 major problems in modern SpongeBob, before we dive into how to properly fix the aesthetics in modern SpongeBob, we first have to look at when exactly did the show stop feeling like it was underwater. I believe the answer is shockingly season 4. Yeah, I know it's the generic answer everyone gives to these kind of "why did SpongeBob fall off" type questions, but this is true. Steven Hillenburg, the creator of the show, left after season 3. He left an amazing mark on SpongeBob, not only as a talented creative, but also as a marine biologist, injecting his knowledge on the underwater into the show. It's very apparent to the entire fan base that when he left, not only did the quality of the show fall off, but also did the marine feel, as he applied so much of his knowledge to these episodes, and now that's gone. Well, although we've been talking down on the later seasons of SpongeBob, making it seem like there is no hope, there has actually, very recently, been an episode that brings us back to that long-awaited feel. That episode is A Fish Called Sandy. This episode not only reignited the underwater experience, but also is viewed as a comeback episode for SpongeBob in general after years of mediocrity. The episode revolves around Sandy getting gills and experiencing Bikini Bottom as an actual fish. The creators do a good job of putting us in Sandy's perspective, almost like we're experiencing it for ourselves. Even small things like the seagrass, which is usually just in the background, is given so much attention, and this detail very much helps the underwater aesthetic. But most importantly, the episode just looks beautiful. This is the best and most underwater themed SpongeBob episode that we've gotten in years. Not only that, but the darker, inky colors give not only the nostalgic kick of the older seasons, but also reintroduces the undersea vibe that the older seasons had. This is actually because the supervising director, Ian Vanquez, intentionally tried to replicate the classic style. This was revealed by the showrunner Vincent Waller when he was asked on Blue Sky, question, is the classic aesthetic in A Fish Called Sandy intended to be a one-time thing, or is it going to be the status quo for the series going forward? No, it was Ian Vanquez flexing his artistic chops, and a tip of the hat to the original designers. It will not be status quo, since it was Steve who instigated the changes away from the original designs, but you will see the original designs popping up from time to time. Although the plot is nothing special, just being a fish out of water story, or in this case, a fish in water story, the simplicity of the episode allows us to take in all of the amazing scenery of the episode, making it more like a breathtaking ocean experience, rather than just your regular chaotic SpongeBob episode. So, what can the SpongeBob creators learn from this episode to help bring back the classic underwater vibe? Firstly, colors. Make them darker. It's the most notable and easiest change the creators could do in order to combat the oversaturated, generic sky-like setting of the newer seasons and actually make it feel underwater. The second main thing the show can do is explore more of the sea and pay attention to detail. Instead of visiting some crazy unnatural buildings, they could use some of the many beautiful natural environments that are in the ocean. This helps not only with the underwater vibes, but also helps ground the plot, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. They should also pay more attention to the environment instead of glossing over lots of small details that helped flesh out the world. This is what A Fish Called Sandy did best, and replicating this would definitely benefit them if they go forward with it. Another thing they should do is make more simple, ocean-based plots instead of going super crazy with different gadgets and crazy shenanigans. This is the biggest thing that the creators can do. Not only can it bring back the underwater feel, but it can also appease the fans who have been saying the show has been going downhill. Making the plots more simple will force the showrunners into using the environment environments as characters they already have, focusing the plotlines back down to the ocean instead of the random stuff that usually happens. But what is the point in trying to fix this? Why should the showrunners focus on this seemingly meaningless detail instead of focusing on making their show better? Well, on the surface, it may seem like the underwater vibe isn't important, but something which stood out to me when making this video is how when the show started falling off, so did the underwater feeling. I don't believe this is any coincidence. I think a lot of the reasons that modern SpongeBob doesn't work quality-wise is also the reason why the underwater vibe is gone. Therefore, the creator should care about the setting and want to change it. So those are all the reasons why SpongeBob doesn't feel like it's underwater anymore, and how I think we can fix it. Even with how insane SpongeBob gets,
I think I'm gonna explode!
there are some episodes that fans think are a mistake. From Squidward and SpongeBob switching personalities, to Sandy literally taking off her fursuit. Today, we're going over the 7 SpongeBob episodes that fans think were a mistake. Starting off with Breath of a Fresh Squid. The episode starts off with reintroducing a familiar dynamic between SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward. Squidward is sleeping peacefully in his house, while SpongeBob and Patrick watch him sleep and eat some chips. Soon after, Squidward wakes up and freaks out, asking why his neighbors are in his room. Apparently, they're waiting to watch the sunrise with him, and they break into Squidward's house every morning.
Here we are on the 4th of July.
At this point, just like any normal person, Squidward decides to make a 3-hour-long monologue about how he never wants to see SpongeBob and Patrick again. And also like any normal person, he creates an electric fence around his house and a catapult to throw SpongeBob away whenever he comes inside.
SpongeBob!
But somehow, even after they got catapulted away from Squidward's house, the duo lands back inside the fence. So far, this has been like any other SpongeBob episode. Squidward's grumpy, SpongeBob's too cheerful, and Patrick, well, he's Patrick. But this is where they completely flip the script. When Squidward is kicking SpongeBob and Patrick out, he accidentally touches the electric fence and gets shocked to the point where his entire brain chemistry changes. And for maybe the first time in his life, Squidward's happy. SpongeBob says that he's gonna go to the petting zoo, and Squidward excitingly asks SpongeBob if he can join. The trio enjoy the entire day together. And the next morning, it's Squidward who breaks into SpongeBob's home to watch the sunrise with him. So far, both SpongeBob and Patrick were loving the new Squidward, but it's only when they get to work that SpongeBob starts to miss the grumpy old cashier. Squidward tries to do his normal job, but he's too nice to all the customers, and even gives out free Krusty Krab hats. At this point, Krabs tells Squidward to go cook some patties with SpongeBob if he can't do his normal job properly. But let's just say he cooks his patties too well, and it causes a certain Sponge to get jealous.
Squidward made him.
They look okay to me.
Mr. Krabs even gives Squidward a reward for all of the hard work he's done.
You're me new Employee of the Month.
And if things couldn't get any worse, Patrick suddenly walks through the door with a cake for the winner of Employee of the Month. So SpongeBob has to do the most painful thing possible. Patrick also invites everyone over to his house to celebrate Squidward getting Employee of the Month. And at the party, Squidward is the one who is happy and cheerful, while SpongeBob is sitting on his own and hasn't even touched his cake. He's just staring into the table, trying to convince himself that it's okay if Squidward is a better cook than him. It's only when SpongeBob sees Squidward pogo dancing with his best friend that he decides enough is enough and kicks Squidward out of his own party. Unfortunately, Squidward forgets that the fence he'd planted around his house is electrified, and turns into normal, grumpy Squidward once again. Worst of all, both Patrick and SpongeBob touch the fence as well, meaning all 3 of them are their saddest, grumpiest versions. All in all, it's not a bad episode by any means, and I really enjoyed watching it. So why is this episode considered a mistake? Well, from the start of the show, SpongeBob has become the goofy character who doesn't understand boundaries, while Squidward has been the relatable cashier. And while there have been other episodes where Squidward becomes happy, the reason why this episode stands out in particular is that Squidward becomes more SpongeBob than SpongeBob himself. For once, the balance between the two characters was completely flipped. with Squidward getting everything to work out for him, while SpongeBob just has to watch someone with way less plot armor than him luck his way through life. And honestly, it's really strange to see even Squidward smile. But what's even weirder is the time that Sandy became furless. I'm of course talking about the episode Somebody's in the Kitchen with Sandy. The episode starts with Plankton trying to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula. His entire plan is to hide inside of the Krusty Krab, wait for SpongeBob to take it to the front door, and then make his escape. But unfortunately, the Krabby Patty he ends up on is given to a very special customer, and before he can get away, he's put inside of Sandy's special suit, where he has to watch Sandy messily eat the patty, but luckily he didn't have to watch for too long. Sandy heads back home, takes off her suit, and then literally takes off her fur, just so that she can take a bath. Luckily, some of the water from the bath falls on Plankton, and he's brought back to life. He quickly realizes that Sandy is out of her fur, so he comes up with a diabolical plan to use this to his advantage.
Wish me luck!
But it didn't even stop with Plankton controlling Sandy's body. As all of this is happening, pink and naked Sandy realizes that someone stole her fur and is out for vengeance. But Plankton is completely oblivious to all of this and makes his way back to the Krusty Krab to finally get his hands on the secret formula. SpongeBob is suspicious and says that Sandy isn't acting like herself today. He even brings up how Sandy isn't wearing her spacesuit and helmet today, but Plankton claims that's just because she can breathe underwater now. And SpongeBob somehow buys this story, so they get to cooking.
Double grilling temperature of 274 degrees.
Plankton is finally gonna get what he's wanted for so long, straight from the source. Nothing could make this heist even easier.
I'm putting the secret Krabby Patty formula out in plain sight.
But working for SpongeBob turns out to be way harder than Plankton signed up for.
Steady! We're off center by 3.6 millimeters.
At the same time, Sandy's being made fun of by the other residents of Bikini Bottom. She tries to use seaweed to cover up her behind, but it doesn't go so well.
Hey, look!
By this point, Plankton is absolutely frustrated with SpongeBob, and having to keep up the act of being Sandy, so he decides to ditch everything and make a mad run for the formula.
It's finally mine!
But right at that moment, the real Sandy shows up, and they have a dramatic showdown.
My eye!
At the end of it all, the police finally shows up to imprison the criminal.
But don't fret.
Honestly, this one is up on the list just because of how insane and weird Sandy looks without her fursuit on. She just looks wrong when she's naked, and the scene of her taking off her fursuit is enough to give any SpongeBob fan nightmares. I'm surprised they were even able to air that scene, as some of the concept art for this episode showed Sandy as even more disgusting outside of her fursuit. But even this episode is better than the next one on our list, where two completely opposite characters switch lives. As the saying goes, the algae's always greener on the other side. At least, that's what the episode The Algae's Always Greener tries to tell us. It starts off with Plankton having yet another plan to steal the Krabby Patty for himself. But just like always, he ends up missing the mark.
It was just another failed Krabby Patty theft attempt.
So he goes back, once again by his own incompetence. Even his computer wife Karen taunts him for failing yet again. So he takes out some soda and decides to get something to eat to get his spirits back up.
Synthesize me up some grub.
But that's when he has a genius idea.
I wish I could be successful like Mr. Krabs.
Then why don't you just use the thing you built last Tuesday?
Okay, well, it was Karen's idea. But still, Plankton decides to use the transmorgifier and goes into an alternate universe.
Mr. Plankton? I'm in the Krusty Krab.
That's when he hears SpongeBob outside, serving up fresh Krabby Patties to the customers. He asks SpongeBob to take one of the patties to his office for bun inspection. But when SpongeBob says he can't do that, Plankton falls back into his old habits.
That patty is for the customer, sir.
I'll boil the customer.
But SpongeBob then hands Plankton 2 patties that he made on the off chance that Plankton wanted to do a bun inspection that day. And Plankton quickly takes the patties back to Krabs' office. Wait, I mean his office, to do a classic evil villain monologue.
The patties, SpongeBob?
But he's interrupted by SpongeBob wanting his weekly performance review about the quality of his Krabby Patties. Even when Plankton says it's fine as it is, SpongeBob just won't take no for an answer and literally begs Plankton to come up with something that he can improve on.
The sauce!
But as soon as Plankton says this, SpongeBob immediately goes into despair, unable to even say anything. So Plankton thinks fast on his feet and makes a horrible decision.
You're on register now.
Register?
So SpongeBob is now co-cashiering along with Squidward. But just when Plankton thought he could finally get some alone time with his Krabby Patties, Squidward barges in, saying that he can't work with SpongeBob all day. And Plankton is a fair boss, so he decides to follow Squidward's request.
Hope you like gray.
But Plankton still can't catch a break, because right then, his daughter shows up and asks Plankton for an arm and a leg.
Could I please have an advance on my allowance?
And once again, Plankton decides to fix it in his own way, offering Pearl a huge advance just to get out of the way.
Go crazy.
But that's just the least of his problems.
Oh my goodness!
But even this wasn't enough problems for one day, because suddenly a siren started going off, and that's when SpongeBob explains why the siren was installed in the first place.
And he's finally got a Krabby Patty!
That's right. Since Plankton has the life of Eugene Krabs, Krabs has the life of Plankton. And after a dramatic showdown with SpongeBob, just like always, Mr. Krabs fails to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula, and everyone celebrates. By the end of this, Plankton just hates having this life, so he willingly goes back to his old life and eats holographic meatloaf.
Yeah, it's not worth it!
Honestly, it's safe to say that this episode was a mistake in more ways than one. First up, this might be a pet peeve, but I think they should have renamed the restaurant to something other than the Krusty Krab, because it just doesn't make sense for the alternate universe restaurant ran by Plankton to still be called the Krusty Krab. Second, Krabs behaving like Plankton and Plankton behaving like Krabs is just so strange to see. It seems like something that the writers had a nightmare about, and then decided to actually make it into an episode. But worst of all, naked Krabs might be worse than naked Sandy when it comes to being nightmare fuel. All in all, this episode is definitely up there on the list. But while in this episode, we saw Mr. Krabs from an alternate reality act weirdly, in the next episode, we see the canon Mr. Krabs nearly sell the formula to Plankton. In The Hankering, the episode starts with a loud noise being heard from Mr. Krabs' office. He immediately kicks everyone out for some reason, and then lets SpongeBob and Squidward off work early. He runs off into the distance, but not before leaving behind something very interesting.
A nickel?
After a short road trip, Krabs and SpongeBob end up at the Slot Pail, where he orders chum. And that's where they find why Mr. Krabs is really here.
One plate of chum!
SpongeBob freaks out about how Mr. Krabs can like chum when they have Krabby Patties back in Bikini Bottom. But that's when Mr. Krabs talks about his old Navy days, where he formed a special bond with chum after a traumatic incident. So him loving chum was only because of that one day in the Navy when he was forced to eat it. And now he has a craving for chum constantly and can't go without it. And somehow Krabs convinces SpongeBob to keep this a secret. But that's when Sal drops a bombshell on Mr. Krabs. At this point, the withdrawal kicks in, and Mr. Krabs absolutely needs his chum. So he takes on SpongeBob and decides to teach him how to make chum. But SpongeBob has an interesting reaction to just the ingredient list for chum. But SpongeBob tries to make chum in his own way. None of these are good enough though. At this point, the withdrawal is hitting him hard, and he even goes to the chum bucket to try to find some leftover chum in the dustbin.
Krabs?
This is where the show breaks one of its core rules. Mr. Krabs will always try to protect the Krabby Patty secret formula and his money first and foremost. That's his defining characteristic, and he even sold SpongeBob for a few cents. But the moment Plankton offers a lifetime supply of chum, Mr. Krabs is ready to give up everything he has.
Oh, you want it.
And look, you can't blame him considering the sight he sees when he comes back to Plankton with the formula and SpongeBob in tow. But as always, Plankton turns on Mr. Krabs and tries to take the formula for himself, while also killing Mr. Krabs in the process. But things don't go as he planned. What he was forgetting is that Mr. Krabs absolutely loves chum. So while Plankton is busy swimming through the chum to find the secret formula, Mr. Krabs just eats every last bit of chum, the secret formula, and Plankton. And it even had a happy coincidence.
I think I killed me taste for chum.
Honestly, like I mentioned before, this episode is the biggest mistake so far. Unlike the previous episodes, where characters go to alternate universes, get electrocuted, or take off their fur, in this episode, Mr. Krabs is willingly selling out his money and the Krabby Patty secret formula for some chum obsession that we only find out about in this episode. It just doesn't really make sense. And so it's understandable why a lot of people, including myself, think that this episode is a mistake. Maybe if it had a few scenes where Mr. Krabs tries to resist handing over the formula and fights off his chum obsession, it could have made it more believable. But as it stands, this episode is one of the weirder ones out there. But Mr. Krabs isn't the only one with extremely weird episodes about him. So now, let's talk about the next episode that fans thought was a mistake, Rockabye Bival. It starts off with SpongeBob and Patrick hearing a strange noise from a coral plant, and that's when they find something interesting.
It's a baby scallop.
Now, the natural response Patrick has is to destroy the scallop. But like any good mother, SpongeBob decides to adopt the poor, defenseless scallop, and even gives it the best seat in his house.
There you go.
But from the start, it's easy to see that neither of them are ready for the responsibility of taking care of another life.
Somebody's hungry.
SpongeBob even goes as far as giving up one of his Krabby Patties to the scallop.
So you crazy?
But even when SpongeBob tailors his food to the scallop, nothing seems to be good enough.
Let's try a donut.
French fries?
The scallop isn't done and immediately starts crying, so SpongeBob has to find a way to make the scallop stop. But for one, it's Patrick who understands what to do and saves the day.
Good as new.
Considering how great this day went, Patrick and SpongeBob decide to adopt the scallop and become its dad and mom respectively. And it does go well for one day, with the trio spending their entire day together, and even eating ice cream. But right from the second day, Patrick gets into his character too much. And since he's the dad, he leaves for work, while SpongeBob has to manage everything at home. Even with 6 hands to do his work, he has a little too much to handle. And when Patrick finally comes back late from work, he promises that he'll give SpongeBob a break tomorrow, and just needs the day off to get used to work. And SpongeBob agrees, saying that he can't wait for that break. But guess what happens the next day?
Patrick, I really need my...
Tomorrow?
After multiple days of this happening, the only break SpongeBob has gotten is a break from having to speak in coherent words. So SpongeBob decides to take matters into his own hands and have a talk with Patrick.
You never do anything.
That's when we get one of the funniest meme templates from the show, where SpongeBob shows just how many diapers the scallop can use. At this point, Patrick starts crying and says that he had no idea it was this hard for SpongeBob, and commits that he'll make sure he comes home by 6 p.m. on the next day to give SpongeBob his long-deserved break.
12 o'clock.
Oh boy, that was some party.
They argue again, and in the end of it all, Patrick says that he doesn't need this and goes back to work. And then we get probably the most dramatic reveal of this entire episode.
This is work.
So just like any old married couple, they get straight back to arguing, but their argument is interrupted by Junior, who is ready to jump out of the second story window to get away from their arguments. Just when it seems like SpongeBob and Patrick are the worst parents for not being able to save their son, they get to see the fruit of their, well, at least SpongeBob's labor.
He's flying.
He gives SpongeBob and Patrick a reward for taking care of him for so long. And both SpongeBob and Patrick are really happy with how the scallop grew up.
Let's have another.
And that's where the episode ends. Firstly, even though it's just a baby clam, it's hard to even imagine SpongeBob and Patrick as parents, let alone actually see them on screen. But the real mistake in this episode is because of SpongeBob. It's completely in character for Patrick to laze off and do absolutely nothing, but SpongeBob is just a goofball, as much as Patrick. And while he's dedicated to his work at the Krusty Krab, I still don't think he'd get used to working so much and caring for a baby so quickly. But in the next next episode, it's Patrick who causes the entire episode to seem like a mistake. Yeah, we can't make a video talking about SpongeBob episodes that were a mistake without talking about Patrick Smartpants. It starts off like any other episode featuring SpongeBob and Patrick. It shows them being pretty dumb and trying to catch some jellyfish. But as they're having fun and running around, Patrick finds a weird sign that he's not able to read in time. SpongeBob immediately goes down to look for Patrick, and he finally finds him being buried deep in the ground.
There's your head.
Now, we don't know why. Maybe it's the fact that his brain got moved around because of the fall, or maybe losing his head that caused his brain to restart. But either way, the moment Patrick put on his head, he completely turns into a different person.
I find all this laughter to be highly illogical.
For one of the first and only times in the show, Patrick is smart, and he doesn't even want to catch jellyfish anymore.
Creatures of the deep.
And while SpongeBob writes it off as Patrick just being weird and gets back to hunting jellyfishes, Patrick actually writes and draws in a small book. And when SpongeBob tells Patrick to do something fun, he has a completely different idea of what fun even means.
Admire the beauty of nature.
Instead of spending time together with SpongeBob, Patrick makes up an excuse that he has to go and quickly takes his leave.
I really must be going.
Back at his home, instead of watching TV like always, Patrick instead studies plankton like it's a science experiment.
I'll show you subspecies!
After this, Patrick and SpongeBob decide to go off to Squidward's house, and instead of making fun of Squidward, Patrick instead critiques Squidward's music, that too with true class.
Oh, I never thought to do it like that.
And when SpongeBob asks Patrick how he can know so much about music, this is what he has to say.
A creative outlet provides a spiritual release.
By this point, Squidward is impressed and asks Patrick to be his mentor on the spot. And Patrick, who is starting to become quite arrogant, agrees to do it.
Let's take it from the top.
And when SpongeBob tries to join their session, Patrick quickly kicks him out, saying that it's a solo clarinet performance.
Clarinet only.
A few moments later, SpongeBob is pleading with Patrick to spend some time together, but Patrick just says they're not compatible anymore.
We're just not compatible anymore.
And he literally leaves SpongeBob crying in the street. But he doesn't stop there. SpongeBob goes to Sandy to get some company and deal with his loneliness. But instead, he finds that Patrick is already there. Patrick didn't just abandon SpongeBob. He also took away SpongeBob's other best friend. But if messing up one friendship wasn't enough, he messes up a second one by making Sandy feel like she doesn't know anything.
Even the simplest of mammals could figure it out.
By this point, both SpongeBob and Patrick are at their home, reflecting on what has happened so far.
I never thought I'd lose my best friend.
SpongeBob.
Patrick finally comes to his senses and decides that he wants SpongeBob back. So he goes on a quest to find a way to get fun back in his life by doing countless experiments. But none of this works. So he comes up with a new plan. Patrick's entire plan is to kidnap SpongeBob, and then they'll have fun with him. But even all of this isn't enough to make Patrick feel better.
When did the fun go away?
It went away when you jumped off that cliff.
So Patrick knows what he has to do. He's going to redo the accident, and then he'll bring the fun back in his life. But when he lands down, it doesn't work. He's still the same old smart Patrick. But that's when he gets an idea.
Brain coral! No wonder you got so smart, buddy.
And so Patrick decides that he wants to give up his smartness just to have fun with SpongeBob again.
Knowledge can never replace friendship.
And that's where the episode ends, with Patrick being dumb once again. Now look, smart Patrick alone is enough to make this entire episode a mistake. But what's even more confusing is that some coral can do the job of a brain for Patrick better than Patrick's own brain. And honestly, I still can't get over how smart Patrick is in this episode. He's smart enough to catch plankton and literally study him, and even better than Sandy at researching stuff. Overall, this SpongeBob episode is definitely one of the show's mistakes, but it's still better than the last episode on our list, an episode where one of the most beloved characters tears Bikini Bottom down just to hunt her best friend. I'm talking about the episode Pre-Hibernation Week. It starts off with Sandy raking leaves in an interesting way.
There we go.
But soon after, she realizes that there's still a lot of leaves on the ground because SpongeBob has been raking too slowly. And like most people, he blames his tools.
These are big leaves.
She quickly gets started on raking the leaves while she tells SpongeBob to get the other work done. It's clear that Sandy is in a rush to get all of her work done.
I'm hibernating next week.
SpongeBob does some quick math and realizes that they only have 168 hours left before Sandy has to go hibernate. At this point, Sandy has a small meltdown.
I can't burn carbs in my sleep.
But she has her best friend SpongeBob, and he makes a promise to her that he'll make sure she gets everything done.
I'm willing to sacrifice any of my time.
Well, he and Sandy go have a good day together on Sand Mountain. It's not enough for Sandy. So the moment SpongeBob goes to sleep, she does this. The next day, SpongeBob gets a bowling ball dropped on his head, gets thrown off the sea needle, gets impaled by a fire hydrant, and gets so traumatized that he literally dissolves into goo. He tries to tell Sandy that he can't keep doing these dangerous stunts anymore. And for once, he sounds like the voice of reason, but his mouth just won't cooperate with him.
I just feel like maybe I need
So the first opportunity he gets, he runs far away from Sandy and hides at the best place he can think of. But as he's running away, he leaves behind his clothes, and when Sandy finds them, she concludes what any reasonable person would think.
Something terrible must have happened to him.
She goes down to the Krusty Krab and divides everyone up into 2 teams so they can find SpongeBob. But no matter where they look, they can't find SpongeBob anywhere.
He's not in my thoughts.
Think again.
By this point, they've been at it for days and ask their overlord, Sandy, for a break.
Think about the children. Use the children.
No one wants to keep searching for the adorable sea sponge anymore, so they come up with every excuse to make Sandy think that they found SpongeBob. But Sandy isn't gonna give up that easily, so they use the oldest tactic in the book.
Look, he's up in the sky. Huh?
Now, Sandy is all on her own, so now there's no one to stop her from being completely unhinged. So she literally tears down Bikini Bottom just to find SpongeBob.
Nope.
Everyone is hiding inside of Patrick's Rock, and the moment that they realize that SpongeBob is with them, they have a very interesting reaction. SpongeBob is backed up in a corner, so he has to come clean and admit to Sandy what really happened.
I can't play with you anymore.
And Sandy is very understanding of SpongeBob. She doesn't even say one bad word about SpongeBob, literally abandoning her because he couldn't deal with his feelings. And that's where the episode ends. Honestly, this has to take the cake when it comes to being the biggest mistake. First off, SpongeBob being too scared to have fun is so out of character for him. His personality is that he's a goofball who loves doing dangerous things and doesn't realize when he's in danger. We even made an entire video about all the times that SpongeBob should have died, but survived. So this just doesn't make any sense. Moreover, Sandy is definitely a little unhinged a lot of the time, but even she isn't that unhinged that she would tear down Bikini Bottom just to look for SpongeBob. But the biggest offender in this is definitely Squidward. We can clearly see that he's also doing work to try to find SpongeBob, when the actual Squidward would never do extra work for SpongeBob. Overall, it's an episode where no one acts like they should, and for that reason, this is the episode that most fans think should have never made it on screen. Now, that's all the SpongeBob episodes that fans think were a mistake. If you enjoyed this, then smash that subscribe button and watch the other videos on our channel. SpongeBob trying to hide a body, to evil clones. For most people thinking it's a kid's show, SpongeBob has some pretty messed up episodes. So today, we're gonna go over the 10 darkest ones to see how dark the show can really get. Starting with the graveyard shift. The episode starts at the Krusty Krab, where SpongeBob and Squidward are tasked with taking the night shift, which SpongeBob, for some reason, thinks is the most fun thing in the world, because it means he can work more. After a few hours of goofing around in the night shift, it starts to get really dark outside, and Squidward asks SpongeBob to take out the trash, which might not have been a very good idea. Yeah, clearly SpongeBob doesn't handle his fear of the dark well, which is not good because Squidward sees this and wants to get his revenge on SpongeBob for being annoying all night long. So he tells him a very detailed scary story about a man named the Hash-Slinging Slasher. He has a spatula for an arm, and every Tuesday night, he lurks outside. You know he's coming because first the lights will flicker, then the phone starts ringing, and then after that, a guy will arrive off a bus, and finally, he gets you. But what started as an obviously made-up story quickly turns into a nightmare for both of them, because later in the night shift, out of nowhere, the lights start actually flickering, and then shortly after, the phone rings, and nobody picks up. Squidward starts getting terrified as his own scary story starts coming to life, but then to put icing on the cake, a bus comes, and a random guy hops off of it, and if it couldn't get any worse, he reveals he has a spatula for an arm. The Hash-Slinging Slasher is actually real, and he makes his way busting into the Krusty Krab to get SpongeBob and Squidward.
Can I have a job application? I brought my own spatula.
Yeah, it turns out that this was just some random dude, and everything that happened that night was just a pure coincidence. But there's still one thing that's not adding up.
Wait, if that was you on the phone and you on the bus, then who was flickering the lights?
Yeah, this episode was really unsettling, especially with that ending. But these episodes are only gonna get darker as the video goes on. Coming in at number 9, we have One Course Meal. The episode starts with Plankton, as usual, trying to steal the secret formula. But this time, he actually gets pretty close, and gets Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob held captive in an elaborate machine. It seems like all hope is lost, until Mr. Krabs' daughter Pearl randomly walks in. And it turns out Plankton has a crippling fear of whales.
Stay back, whale! I'm privy to what you do to organisms like me. I've seen those documentaries.
So after Plankton runs away like a little baby, Mr. Krabs gets a very messed up idea to get back at Plankton. But instead of just using this newfound knowledge as a quick scare tactic, or maybe a one-time prank, Mr. Krabs decides to mentally destroy him. Back at the chum bucket, Plankton explains that why he has such a big fear of whales is because one took out his entire family. But then Pearl barges into the Krusty Krab and scares the ever-living heck out of Plankton. But it turns out this was actually just Mr. Krabs dressed up as Pearl. This all causes Plankton to lose sleep, and my boy Plankton does not look good. After many more sleepless nights, and literal nightmares about Pearl eating him, Plankton is so tormented by these constant fear attacks that he straight up tries to unalive himself by laying in the road and waiting for a car to run him over. Meanwhile, Mr. Krabs is celebrating this in his office. This is a children's cartoon with a TVY7 rating. Having references to psychological torture and unaliving yourself in the same episode is dark, but it's only gonna get darker, because coming in at number 8, we have the planet of the jellyfish, which starts just like a typical day, with SpongeBob and Patrick going jellyfishing. Things start to take a turn, and then a creature appears in the background, not doing anything, just watching. It eats a jellyfish, but for some reason, he also doesn't want to possess or kill SpongeBob. So what is going on? SpongeBob goes and tries to get some sleep, but goes to the couch where he manages to somehow accidentally choke out the jellyfish and prevent himself from getting cloned. But it's literally everyone besides a random customer getting possessed. And it's not like they attack him, they just kind of hiss at the customer, which I guess means that only the jellyfish can infect people. SpongeBob makes his way to the freezer to get some mentioned that he didn't like it.
No mayonnaise!
They don't have any mayo in the tree dough, but thankfully they have some glasses so they can blend in. Well, then it looks like their disguises are actually working. But this is until SpongeBob knocks the glasses off like an idiot. So for some reason actually works, and they evaporate into green goo. And when they do this, their real life counterpart comes back to life. While Patrick's busy eating all that green slime, let's move on to the 7th darkest episode of the show, Rock Bottom, which starts with SpongeBob and Patrick leaving Glove World. They get on a bus, but while leaving, Patrick notices that they pass a sign that says leaving Bikini Bottom. And just before SpongeBob even gets a chance to look out the window and see what's going on, they shoot straight down a cliff, getting dropped into a town called Rock Bottom. Bottom. And right away, this place gets really weird. We see a bunch of creatures that aren't like anything we've ever seen before. Something about these creatures are just otherworldly. Something I feel like we would never even see in the same waters as Bikini Bottom. But I mean, I guess this does make sense because we are way deeper in the ocean. But anyway, SpongeBob goes out and tries to see the bus schedule. But right as SpongeBob walks away for like 2 seconds, he misses the bus and Patrick and him end up getting separated. SpongeBob is all alone in Rock Bottom. So now SpongeBob has no other choice but to sit there in the dark waiting for the next bus to come by. But SpongeBob is clearly not locked in because he gets distracted for literally like 10 seconds tying his shoe. And while he's doing this, the bus just flies by, not even giving him a chance to react. After missing the bus a few more times, SpongeBob starts to get hungry, so he goes to check out the local vending machine. It literally just feels like they're teasing him at this point. This has gotta be some sort of mental torture. SpongeBob then goes to the office to complain about this, and after waiting in line, it turns out that there are no more buses going to Bikini Bottom till the morning. But this is where the episode starts to get really creepy, because they shut down the office and turn all the lights off. Imagine being all alone in a new town, surrounded by a bunch of foreign fish people you can barely understand. I would hate to be SpongeBob in this situation.
Just gotta keep sprinting! Sitting, bleeding. Hey, who's there?
And right after he gets cornered, turns out it's just the guy who found his balloon from earlier. And he actually turns out to be pretty chill. And he's even kind enough to blow up the balloon to help SpongeBob gracefully float back home. If it took SpongeBob a whole day to escape, it would probably take Patrick a month. But while this episode may have been dark for its unsettling premise and creepy atmosphere, this next episode is dark for a reason you would never expect. Coming in at number 6, we have Earworm. This episode starts with SpongeBob listening to his favorite song, the musical Doodle, while working at the Krusty Krab.
Round and round the record spins all day. Listen again, it takes you far away. Trying to stop it is futile, so just listen now to my musical doodle.
Though, through this episode, SpongeBob just keeps listening to the same song. It's like he can't get enough of it, which is weird because SpongeBob usually has the attention span of a goldfish. He goes flying home from the Krusty Krab to listen to the musical Doodle, until he finds a record shop in town also playing the musical Doodle. So of course, he goes in and he has to buy it. He keeps going around and keeps playing the song, but not even Gary likes it. Later that day, SpongeBob tries to go to bed, but he quite literally cannot get this song out of his head. So he goes into the living room to listen to it just one more time. But the next day, something isn't right. When SpongeBob goes to work, it looks like he's sleep deprived. Most likely because he's been listening to the musical Doodle all night, and he didn't get any sleep. But something is different.
Musical Doodle! SpongeBob! Wake up, boyo!
The song at this point is completely controlling SpongeBob. It's like he's not even in control of his own body anymore. So SpongeBob decides that he doesn't want to keep fighting it, and just embraces the musical Doodle, which at first might seem like it's working. But then he goes around and starts messing up things with his job, like accidentally giving a customer onions on their patty to a customer that didn't want onion, giving patties to the wrong customers, spitting on people, and just straight up annoying people with his singing. But after Mr. Krabs senses that he's losing money, he confronts SpongeBob and tells him that he has to stop singing. But SpongeBob just can't do it. So he goes back into the kitchen and he's struggling. He literally can't stop singing the song. And he starts going insane. He wrecks the whole kitchen and he is looking as creepy as ever, still singing the musical Doodle.
That you ran from is back again. You wonder if the madness will ever end.
Something is wrong. This isn't just him liking the song anymore. There is something deeper. The gang breaks into his house and they find him clung to the ceiling like a cockroach. They tie him up and then find out the truth. SpongeBob was suffering from a condition known as earworm, which when your brain gets stuck on a catchy tune, you can attract an earworm infection. And SpongeBob has a nasty one living in there, so they start singing SpongeBob a bunch of catchy tunes. Mr. Krabs tries an old sea shanty, but that doesn't work. Sandy tries playing a Western song, but that doesn't satisfy the earworm either. But then Squidward decides to start playing his clarinet. And it's so bad that the earworm just leaves because of how trash it is. But later that night when Squidward goes to bed, the earworm crawls in his head and makes Squidward sing to his own clarinet.
Oh yeah, that's catchy stuff, Squiddy.
Something about the thought of a worm crawling into your head and making you addicted to a song that's out of your control is terrifying. But these episodes are only gonna get more terrifying, because now we're on to the top 5. Starting with the episode A Pal for Gary. And this episode personally had me terrified as a kid. It starts like any normal day, with SpongeBob feeding Gary. SpongeBob goes off to work, but poor Gary just wants to go for a walk, which makes Gary really sad. But it turns out he was just guilt-tripping SpongeBob, because when he leaves, he uses the leash to grab a bunch of stuff, and starts watching a cowboy show. So it turns out bro is actually completely fine, but SpongeBob at work starts to get worried and feels bad for Gary. So he calls him for some reason, which just makes SpongeBob feel even worse.
Too distraught to even answer the phone. Hello, you've reached SpongeBob and... Come on, Gary. Gary. The two of us are having too much fun together to answer the phone right now. So leave a message and we'll call you right back if we ever get a break from having so much fun together.
So after getting off work, SpongeBob tries to find a solution to balance his responsibilities at the Krusty Krab, while also being a good pet owner to Gary. But when he's walking home, he finds a stand selling pets, which gives SpongeBob the idea to get a friend for Gary. The lady selling them tried to warn him that this isn't just any normal pet, but SpongeBob has negative brain cells, so he didn't exactly pick up on that. Back at home, and this thing is already acting really weird, he names this pet Puffy Fluffy, and lets him near Gary, but he nearly kills Gary any chance he gets when SpongeBob isn't looking. But as soon as SpongeBob gets involved, he goes back to looking completely innocent like nothing ever happened. Things only get worse when SpongeBob puts them in bed together, which is probably the worst thing he could have done. SpongeBob still doesn't understand, so he brings Gary back downstairs to Puffy Fluffy, who seems to be sleeping nice and cute in a little ball. But when SpongeBob leaves, it turns out this isn't Puffy Fluffy, but it's actually a ball of his own shed skin. And when Gary goes back into the kitchen, he finds that Puffy Fluffy evolved into a giant monster that is in the kitchen looking for anything to feed its appetite. And this thing is horrifying. Meanwhile, SpongeBob is still sleeping, so Gary is left by himself to fend off the giant monster. Meanwhile, Puffy Fluffy starts destroying the entire house, so Gary goes up and tries to fight back, but he's just too weak, and he can't do anything to defeat the giant monster. After a chase throughout the whole house, over the entire night, SpongeBob finally wakes up and sees the entire house destroyed.
Wow, my library! Oh, and my prized memoirs of T.S. Halibut.
SpongeBob barges in at the perfect moment and sees that Puffy Fluffy is about to kill Gary. But SpongeBob has to be the stupidest person in Bikini Bottom, because somehow he thinks that Gary is holding Puffy Fluffy hostage.
You put Fluffy down right now! Bad boy Gary! Bad boy! Bad Gary! Bad!
Puffy Fluffy starts trying to eat SpongeBob, but then Gary goes cowboy mode and actually screws up Puffy Fluffy, getting him to leave town. From now on, SpongeBob realizes that it's not right to leave Gary home alone, so the next day, he brings him into work. The giant monster in this episode is absolutely horrifying, and had me shivering in a dark corner as a kid. And this will always be one of the scariest SpongeBob episodes in my opinion. But another episode that scared the absolute life out of me was number 4 on this list, Krabby Patty Creature Feature. The episode starts with SpongeBob making some Krabby Patties like usual, but then Mr. Krabs hands out some patties to customers. They seem to not want the Krabby Patties, and it turns out they're getting sick of eating the same thing over and over again. They want something new. So after Mr. Krabs learns that they want something different, he takes SpongeBob to the secret basement of the Krusty Krab, where Sandy makes a new Krabby Patty, but SpongeBob thinks this isn't right, and and doesn't want to change the Krabby Patty secret formula, although Mr. Krabs doesn't care, and just wants more money, so he gives out the new and improved patties, which everyone seems to love at first. This is until Mr. Krabs starts acting weird, and turns into a full-on Krabby Patty monster, literally becoming a Krabby Patty. And it's not just Mr. Krabs, because Sandy turns into one too, and so does everyone else in the Krusty Krab. So SpongeBob rushes out of there knowing something's wrong. Meanwhile, the Krabby Patty monsters start running around the town infecting everyone, making random civilians eat them. And by eating them, it also turns them into Krabby Patty monsters. From Bubble Bass to random kids, everyone in town is now a Krabby Patty, except for SpongeBob, who knew the whole time that they never should have changed the recipe. SpongeBob escapes the Krusty Krab and tries to hide in a dumpster till this all blows over. But it's not gonna be that easy, as all him waiting does is get the town destroyed even more. Eventually, in a stroke of luck, one of the only 3 people not affected, Perch Perkins, comes up to SpongeBob and interviews him on the news. But right as he gets taken out by a Krabby Patty monster, he reveals who the only other unaffected person is.
Take a bite! Who's the third person not affected?
So SpongeBob bolts over to the chum bucket and barricades himself inside. And he tells Plankton everything that happened. But it might be too late, because they bust in and grab Plankton and even infect Karen. Now, SpongeBob is literally the only person not infected. So he climbs up the chum and accidentally breaks open a little, which causes Patrick to throw up because of how bad the chum is, which makes the orange Krabby Patty goo get out of his body. And he turns back to normal, so now SpongeBob realizes chum is the cure. So he feeds everyone chum and turns everyone back to normal. A Krabby Patty zombie apocalypse forcing them to eat each other is pretty dark. But so is number 3 on this list, Spongehenge. The episode starts with a bag of leftovers floating into SpongeBob's house because of the extreme winds that were happening in Bikini Bottom. So he goes to check it out and his sponge holes start whistling because of the wind.
My pores are whistling in the wind.
So he keeps going around playing with the wind until the sun takes over the moon's shift. So now SpongeBob has to go to work at the Krusty Krab, and he's about to be late, but the wind is so extreme that he can barely move. And the jellyfish outside aren't letting him leave. So no matter what SpongeBob does, he can't seem to get to work. So eventually, SpongeBob uses the phone and calls Mr. Krabs for some help. And thankfully, Mr. Krabs has a fishing rod for this exact scenario where SpongeBob can't get to work. So he uses it to reel SpongeBob all the way to the Krusty Krab. At work, the wind is so strong that it affects his Krabby Patties. SpongeBob finds his way around it, but what SpongeBob can't find his way around is the fact that the wind is still making his sponge holes play music, which keeps attracting the jellyfish. The winds blow even stronger and completely blow down the Krusty Krab, causing SpongeBob to blow right into Patrick's house for some cover. While he's there, he explains to Patrick that the winds keep making his sponge holes play a tune the jellyfish like. But it's too late, because the wind blows, knocking his rock open, and the jellyfish takes SpongeBob captive.
Hey, pal. Oh! SpongeBob! Get out of here! I'm sorry, SpongeBob, but you've become a negative influence!
So then, SpongeBob runs off to a cave where there's finally no wind, but it starts to get too scary for him. So to keep him company, he spends years chiseling out a stone replica of himself. And then, SpongeBob starts to go completely insane, talking to this stone figure like it's real. But then, he realizes it also has holes just like SpongeBob that might attract the jellyfish. So he puts the stone figure out, hoping it'll distract them, but it turns out that didn't do anything, because the music was way out of tune. So SpongeBob starts plotting and figures out that if he makes a bunch of these stone figures in different sizes, then surely one of them has to attract the jellyfish. And something about these things are horrifying. But the jellyfish seem to love it, so SpongeBob can finally go back to work. But there's a slight problem. It turns out he was in the cave for so long that the Krusty Krab is no more. This episode was really dark, but it doesn't even compare to this next one on the list. Coming in at number 2, we have SB-129, which already sounds weird just from the title. The episode starts with SpongeBob and Patrick annoying Squidward and begging him to go jellyfishing with them. But of course, Squidward isn't about that life. He just wants some peace and quiet to play his clarinet. When he finds out that the Krusty Krab is closed for the day, he gets an idea to sneak over there, lock the doors, and finally be left alone to play his clarinet. But things then start to go sideways really fast. When SpongeBob and Patrick start snooping around outside the Krusty Krab looking for him, Squidward panics and hides inside a freezer. And this might have been the single worst decision he's ever made, because he gets frozen solid for 2,000 years. When he finally thaws out, he walks inside the Krusty Krab, but everything is in the future. The walls are chrome, the air is empty, and the only person around is this weird robotic version of SpongeBob named Spongetron. Spongetron shows him around, and Squidward notices that everything is chrome, and SpongeBob just casually has clones, who still want to go jellyfishing. Eventually, Squidward gets sick of being there, so SpongeBob suggests he uses the time machine to go back home.
Well, if SpongeBob exists in the future, I'd better go to the past.
But Squidward accidentally goes way too far into the past, back to way before his time period. And now he's just trapped in a weird prehistoric time in the ocean. But eventually he makes his way around the creepy forest and finds caveman SpongeBob and Patrick, who are just as dumb as usual, if not even dumber. But they seem to be friendly, so Squidward decides that this is his perfect spot to play the clarinet. So he goes off a little bit, but he keeps hearing them screaming. And that's because they're playing with a jellyfish and stinging themselves. So Squidward teaches them how to properly jellyfish, and then goes back off to play his clarinet. When he finally goes off to do that, caveman SpongeBob and Patrick hear his awful music and get really mad. So they start chasing after him and wanting to kill him. So he goes back to the time machine and accidentally breaks it, which teleports him into nothingness. It's just an empty white room. Squidward thinks that this is the perfect quiet spot to play his clarinet, but then he starts to realize that he's alone, which makes him panic. So he tries to find a way out, and it's not until he says that he misses SpongeBob that everything goes back to normal.
SpongeBob! Patrick!
Hi, Squidward.
Oh, I'm back. I can't believe this. I was in space, and I went to the future, and then I went to the past, and then I was nowhere. But now I'm back.
This episode was horrifying. Like, imagine being trapped in nothingness. But before we get to number 1 on this list, I want to give a quick honorable mention to the episode that scared me the most as a kid. I Had an Accident, aka the gorilla episode. And honestly, nothing about this episode is really that scary or dark to me now, with the gorilla being very obviously CG'd in, but as a kid, I didn't notice that, and it terrified me. From him beating up Patrick and Sandy in a bag, to the gorilla literally ripping SpongeBob in half, I can see why it scared me as a kid. But also, the fact it makes no sense and has weird visuals really puts the creepiness over the top for me.
You know what I don't understand, though?
What?
What's a gorilla doing underwater in the first place?
Well, it's funny you should, see, George, they're onto us!
This episode was so scary to me that whenever it came on TV, I would literally cry and refuse to watch it. But now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the actual darkest episode of the show. Coming in at number 1, we have The Nasty Patty. And this is by far the darkest SpongeBob episode. The episode starts with the health inspector coming to the Krusty Krab. So SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs give him a whole feast to satisfy him, so they can pass the the Krusty Krab health inspection. But after everything seems good, the news comes on saying that there's been a fake health inspector going around town trying to get free food. And when they find this out, they are obviously not happy. Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob want revenge for this guy getting all that free food. So they decide to make a really disgusting Krabby Patty to get back fake health inspector. To make this abomination, they do things like putting hot sauce on it, dipping it in the toilet, rubbing it with Mr. Krabs' gym socks, and probably a whole other list of OSHA violations just to make it this disgusting.
Why, that's the most diabolical Krabby Patty ever spawned.
I call it the Nasty Patty.
Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob give him the Krabby Patty, and although they thought it was a funny and lighthearted prank, they could have never expected what was coming next. When the health inspector is about to take a bite, a fly goes into his mouth and he starts choking on it, leading to a really disturbing scene where the health inspector is literally dying, and SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs are in the kitchen laughing at the pain he's in, not knowing it was too late, and he was actually dead. And to make it even worse, the news came on showing that the fake health inspector was caught, meaning that SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs were now left alone with an unalive body of the real health inspector in their restaurant. Not wanting to take responsibility for their actions, Mr. Krabs decides that the only logical thing to do is to bury the body far, far away so that nobody finds out about this.
And get back to digging!
Aye, aye, sir!
Where am I?
That's right. To make things even worse, it turns out that the health inspector isn't even dead. So they bury him alive, and if things literally could not get any worse, the cops show up. The gig is finally up, or that's what they thought, because it turns out they actually just randomly found them lost out there, and wanted to give him a ride back home. So they agree, but then the worst thing that could have possibly happened happens, because the mud gets washed off of the body, and it goes sliding down the hill right next to the cop car. So now they're left with no choice but to hide the body in the back of the cop car.
Neptune, get away!
After that long, awkward car ride back home, where Mr. Krabs somehow made SpongeBob stay quiet, SpongeBob eventually sneaks out of the car back to the Krusty Krab, where he's tasked with getting the body in the back of the car while Mr. Krabs distracts him. But unfortunately for him, the back is locked. So SpongeBob somehow puts the body in his hat and sneaks it in.
Ahoy there, SpongeBob! I thought you were out back taking care of that shovel!
Well, the back door was locked, so I came around here.
While we go through a minute of SpongeBob struggling to get his hat in the back, Mr. Krabs somehow manages to distract them for long enough to not know what they're doing. But finally, after everything seems good, Mr. Krabs offers them a drink, right as the cops are about to leave. But this was the worst mistake he could have made, because the officer wanted ice in her drink, and for some reason, she insists on going to the back to get ice.
Step aside. You people act like you've committed a murder.
Okay, I confess! SpongeBob killed him!
After blaming each other back and forth, with not many options, Mr. Krabs confesses that they killed him, and hid his body in the freezer. When they go back to check, he is nowhere to be seen.
Say, maybe he turned into a zombie and walked out.
Nah, turns out he just woke up. But that doesn't stop everyone from believing he's a zombie and beating him up even more. In this episode, we saw an attempted murder, corpse concealment, and full-on zombie paranoia. This really doesn't sound like your typical SpongeBob episode, and it's arguably one of the darkest ones in the entire show. But yeah, those were the 10 darkest SpongeBob episodes of all time. Let me know if you agree with these down below. And because you watched all the way to the end, you should click the subscribe button, because I just started this channel and I would love to cover anything and everything SpongeBob related for you guys.